Well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, June the 3rd, 2014, and yours truly is on vacation and having a heck of a time. It is, I don't even know how cold it is this morning. I'm going to use that word because it's about long gone for cold days, I think. It's 71 degrees here in Indianapolis, expecting some intermittent showers. We had a nice little downpour yesterday afternoon around 7 o'clock, which was interesting to say the least. But in the Midwest, eyes to the skies, you will have some significant stormage coming on over the next few days. So it is that kind of a weather out there. Just stay safe. Have a plan. If you don't have a weather radio, flashlight, all of those kind of necessary things, please go out and get them today. You might need them tomorrow. So, vacation all week, both to me and Mr. Prepper Chicks. Eddie, he's in the chat room, so sending him all my love this morning. Working on 17 years now, and I haven't killed him yet. So that's always a plus. But looking forward to definitely 17 more. He's still got some things I need to straighten out in him. And he laughed. So I'm here just, laughing at myself, but whatever. Let's see, some things going on in the news. So, got contacted. I figured I'd just get this over with because, it seems to have taken over my life right now. But got contacted by, a news group yesterday and asked me to come on, for 2 minutes. And, I don't know what I was thinking, but thought it was going to be all audio, and ended up being not just audio, and bigger than I thought it was going to be. So got to be on RT yesterday, RT USA, talking about the government and all of the sanctions they're imposing against the U.S. citizens. What brought it up was the fact that the EPA passed some mandates yesterday, and quite concerning for the coal industry, which, my 2 minutes ended up turning into 5 minutes, which I felt honored. Don't get me wrong. But it's kind of hard to explain everything in just 5 minutes. But the coal mine thing, they're looking at making them at least 30%, cleaner, if that's how you want to term them, and that's going to be damn near almost impossible considering everything else that is going on out there in the world. So that way we all don't end up like China and choking on smog every day. I beg to differ on a lot of points that the government has over the stringent items in this mandate that they have, but that's for a whole nother day. Hits close to home. My stepbrother and his son, and actually his father, have all been coal miners. My great-grandfather was a coal miner. Things have changed a lot from the time my great-grandfather was a coal miner until my nephew is a coal miner. A lot of these people are responsible and reclaim the land and do a lot of great things. So before you decide which side of the fence you're going to be on about it, please dig in and do some research, and just don't assume that one person is going to give you all the information. But some warnings, just so you understand, with, of course, the mandates that are being imposed, prices will increase. A lot of these coal companies will go out of business. Upwards of 40% of our power comes from these coal companies. That's a lot. And unfortunately, they're not giving us a whole lot of choices on the flip side of it to stand in its way, or to stand in its to give us alternatives, let's say. And yes, I'm still sleeping this morning. Some things I was digging into that I wanted to get into yesterday, but, with these mandates, a lot of other industries, a lot of other power industries rely upon the coal industry. It's, they talk about farming as the heart of the Midwest. But if you go into West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, that's pretty much what sustains that area. You take that away from them, and it's going to get really, really ugly in that area. But besides all of that, how are we going to replace 40% of who supplies our power when we have our government already tying our hands on many, many other things? Solar and wind power, to start with, because that's the first thing that everyone thinks of. If you go into and start doing some research on it, you would be surprised at the stipulations involved with wind and solar. There are people out there that have it, don't get me wrong. But try and push that power back to the electrical companies. If you haven't been watching, because they're really sneaky bastards about this kind of stuff, the power companies themselves have already started to push back before it even gets started. So they're already, it's mandatory that they have to allow us to have solar power and tie into the grid for backup. But what they've done now is they've done and gone, let me go through my notes here real fast, a thing called net metering and putting guidelines on it. So right now, if I hooked up to the power company here in Indianapolis using solar or wind or both, I could still stay attached to the grid, and any excess that I have would get pushed back to the power company, and they would have to pay me for it based upon a contract that I would have to sign with them. First of all, it just astounds me that I have to get permission from someone to be able to do this, instead of just doing it on my own. I'm a responsible adult for the most part. It's been questionable a few times, but it is what it is. But who the hell are these electric companies to tell me what I can and cannot do? So now I have to get permission from them, signed a contract, in order to implement solar or wind. If not, there's a whole nother group of, and if you haven't run into them yet, I'm sure that they'll be more vocal here in the future. But they're called nuisance monitors, and yes, they do exist. But it's a whole group of people that actually have job titles, and they're in every state out there, as far as I can tell. But they're called nuisance abatement officers, and they go around and they're a nuisance. Actually, no, they look for issues within communities, and then they, of course, drag your ass to court and fine you all this money and tell you what you can and cannot do. So anyways, you can hook up your solar, your wind, sign a contract with the power company in the area that you're in, push back any overage that you have, and supposedly the power company is supposed to pay you for that extra power that you give them to help them out, because we've all seen in the news here lately how fragile our electrical grid is. They just they cannot handle any kind of any kind of solar, any kind of excess. You know, the rolling blackouts, the brownouts that go on in the summertime with the heat. Yeah, take 40% of our power usage away, and you can see how that's going to impact the electrical grid. You get a good hot summer like we've had here a couple years ago, where it spent for probably a month. It was over 100 degrees here in Indianapolis. And everybody and their brother, if they had an air conditioner, they had it hooked up and running full blast. Imagine what that's going to do to the power grid. So, as a responsible adult who's taking charge of her own self-sustainability, hooks up to the grid, expects the power company to pay her back, and she's helping them out because she's not draining from them. So now the power companies are stepping in and all over the place and saying, no, we won't allow this to happen. We have to stand up and we have to fight back on this. There's no other way around it, because this is just asinine. But in order to do that, you have to understand the facts. And asking me what they are at 8 o'clock in the morning isn't the best option. I'm just letting you know that this is going on. I've seen studies here in Indiana of power companies that are right beside each other, charging rates so different that within a county of each other, the other electrical bill that the customer would get is twice as much. So why doesn't the government go after that? And the scalping that is going on of citizens out there, when people can't afford this stuff. You add in the prices, and we've seen them talk about the prices of natural gas going up. You don't think the coal industry is going to impact that too? It's going to impact everything that we have out there. So then stop and think about, okay, well, we have all these increases. Is it going to affect our food? We've already been warned with the drought in California how the price of food is going to increase. We've seen it with the price of beef, with the winter storms that came through this winter up through Montana and the Dakotas and stuff, killing just thousands and thousands of head of cattle. The beef here in Indianapolis is probably at least a third, if not a half percent higher than it was last year. I think we were paying $2.99. I take my percentages back. $2.99 a pound last year for ground beef, and it's easily $5.99. And that's just the crappy stuff you buy in the store. That's not going to a farmer and getting meat where you trust. So we're talking meat glue, wood fibers, all of that loveliness that they're selling you. So this is going to impact everyone out there. And like I said, unfortunately, our government has already started implementing things in order to not allow us to be as self-sustainable as we would like to be. And I made a crack yesterday about what are we looking for? Are we off-grid, technically? And I got ripped a little bit for that. You know, when I think about off-grid, I think about totally silent. No internet, no nothing. No contact with the outside world. Totally singular. And that's really hard to do for a variety of reasons. And I look at more, you know, not off-grid, but just self-sustaining. I like having internet. I think it's awesome that I can go on and do research just about for any topic whatsoever. I like having contact with the outside world and learn what's going on in other areas. It helps me be better prepared. I posted some stories yesterday, specifically about what's going on in some different countries, because then we can learn what they are doing in a downgrade situation and adjust our preps accordingly. In Venezuela, there are long lines at grocery stores and ration cards to prevent citizens from buying more than the allotted amount of basic needs, such as flour, milk, vegetable oil, toilet paper, and that's become the norm in Venezuela. This week, however, the government has begun to ration an even more essential commodity, which is water. So we watch what's going on in Venezuela, and my heart goes out to them. But then we can adjust our preps accordingly. So if they're rationing all of these supplies, the normal just staples that you need, why can't I do that here? Because the government puts a bullet on me and says I'm a hoarder. There's a D in there, by the way. So now the government is rationing water. Okay, so I adjust my preps. I look at water catchment systems. I put a couple tanks off of my house and collect the water that is coming off my roof. I'll be very careful when you do that. You need to know what kind of shingles you have and all of that. You need to know how to purify it. You just can't go drink it out of the container. But when you start digging, you will find that more than, or probably at least a quarter of our states have some kind of rainwater harvesting laws in effect, where it's illegal to catch friggin' rainwater. There were some studies I was reading about specifically in Colorado, talking about, if every house, which still astounds me once you go down the rabbit trail, why is every house does not have a built-in catchment system. I have a development right across from me, probably, 500 homes in it, I would say. And I guarantee you not one of them, because I've looked, has some kind of water catchment system. I was driving through a rough neighborhood in Indianapolis not too long ago, and oh my goodness, there was a house there that had 4 55-gallon water barrels. So what are these people going to do? What are you going to do when the government says that you can only have so much water per day? Minimally, it takes what? A gallon of water per person a day to sustain yourself? That's just for drinking. That's not cleaning, hygiene, flushing the toilet, washing clothes, washing dishes, or anything like that. That's just to hydrate a body. The grid goes down, you're going to drink every bit of it. Mr. Funky from Boiler Room Radio just brought up a good point. Every drop of water that was ever on this planet is still on this planet. It doesn't just disappear. We learned that in grade school. When it evaporates, what happens? So this college did a study in Colorado, and it looked at it if every house had a water catchment system attached to it. Because we've heard the arguments, the water downstream, the reservoirs would dry up or run really low, et cetera, et cetera. Turns out only 30% of the water that goes down gets caught in the reservoir to begin with. So 30% of the rainwater only makes it there. Add to the fact that if every house and every home had a water catchment system, would they need to rely upon the reservoir? Would they need to rely upon the either government or privately funded water department to begin with? Oh my goodness, I just took money out of some big guy's pocket. Start doing the rabbit trail, and you'll find that's what this all comes down to. This isn't about self-sustainability. This is about politics. This is about taking money from already rich people. This is about control. It's about control of you, me, and our children, our grandchildren, their children and grandchildren. This is about setting up people to do their dirty work for them. Isn't that what the wars are to begin with? The fighting that's going on? Oh, and by the way, we don't have the money in this country to take care of our veterans that have gone overseas and fought their wars. We've seen the big VA scandal that's going on. But it was dropped in the news today that our president has pledged $1 billion more dollars There we go. President Obama has announced a plan to invest $1 billion in stepping up its military presence in Eastern Europe amid the Ukrainian crisis. The White House will send more troops and equipment to the region to reaffirm its commitment to NATO allies. Speaking at a news conference in Warsaw, Obama said America was stepping up its partnership with countries in Eastern Europe with a view to bolstering security. The moves are aimed at upping the pressure on Russia, which Washington has accused of inciting unrest in the Ukraine. Not that we've done anything, right? In line with the plans, Obama will ask Congress to provide up to $1 billion to finance the deployment of more troops and equipment. Funny that he's actually going to ask Congress for this. He doesn't usually do that. But that's a whole nother issue, isn't it? So, we've talked about water. We've talked about how we need water to live, first of all, and how it's feasible for us to get off the grid with water, how it doesn't hurt the environment, and go do your own research. Don't just listen to what I'm rambling on about at 8 o'clock in the morning. Do your own research and find out, oh my goodness, we really are being controlled. So, let's talk about food. Food is something else that we need. One thing I want you all to understand, usually when people think of preparedness or prepping or whatever, hoarding comes to mind, stockpiles come to mind, but you need to move on past that. Yes, it's great to have emergency supplies, don't get me wrong, but you have to replace those. You have to have backups to your backups to your backups. So just like water, it's great to have something easily accessible for emergency purposes that's already set and ready to go. But our stockpiles will run out, and you have to replace them, and you have to have a system in place in order to do that. That's why a lot of us look at catchment systems, whether above or below ground. So you can see where the government's stepping in already and saying, no, you can't do that. Choice is yours whether or not you listen to them. But always have a backup to your backup to your backup. So now we move into, well, let's go back. Nope, we're good. Food. Let's go to food. So I think most of us agree that probably 90% of the crap that they sell us in the grocery store is just that. It actually does more harm to our bodies than it does good. I know I'm a byproduct of that. Growing up, I grew up on a farm with my dad, but my mother, and I've talked about her, and bless her heart, was what I would deem a Betty Crocker cook. She grew up in that time period when Chef Boyardee and Betty Crocker rolled out. So it was the thing to do to feed your kids ravioli every night. Luckily, I had the balance between my father's way of life, and they got divorced, I think, when I was about 8 years old, and I was the only child that went to live with my dad. But I've seen it, you know, I was part of it. And everybody thought it was the greatest thing since, you know, sliced bread back then. Was Chef Boyardee, ravioli, SpaghettiOs, Kraft macaroni and cheese. Now we're older, now we're wiser, and now we're reaping the repercussions of our past actions. Not as easy to take care of, but you start digging into the health benefits of most of the food in the grocery stores. The major boxes companies out there, Walmart specifically comes to mind. You start looking at where the products and start following the rabbit trail where they all come from. Really, it boils down to probably just a handful of companies. I was even shocked to learn that Burt's Bees, the lip balm company, isn't a small owned company. It's owned by one of those guys, those big box companies. But back to food. So, one would think that, okay, well, we understand that the food in the grocery stores isn't good for us. We need to replace and do better by growing our own, something fresh, you know. Can we always rely upon farmers markets or other farmers? Why can't we just grow this stuff in our own homes, in our yards? You know, that green stuff that's all over the place that we spend, you know, at least a day out of our life every week mowing when we could be growing food. Wouldn't that be the responsible thing to do? One would think. But we've seen it, most recently. The two cases that I pointed to were in Florida and in Michigan. And I don't know what the hell's going on in Michigan. But in Florida, there was a couple down there that had a vegetable garden in their front yard for the last 17 years. Now, mind you, don't forget, our First Lady, Michelle Obama, did nothing but tote this past few years about, you know, eating healthier, about growing a vegetable garden. How they have a vegetable garden at the White House that she's been photographed in. So why the hell, if she can do it, why can't we? But we've seen it over and over and over again where people are trying to, but then local government steps in and says, no, you can't have that there. It's against our ordinances. Because it just doesn't look pretty. These people, and I think they're down around Miami, her name is Julie Bass. She could go, at the time that this was printed, which was a while ago, end up possibly going to jail. But they've had this garden for 17 years. 17 years. It's okay to have plastic pink flamingos in your yard, but heaven forbid you try and grow some food. And these people, you know, bless their hearts, but how many people do you think stood up with them to say this is wrong? How many stand up now to help people out? Let's go into micro livestock. Michigan just passed some laws. I think most preppers, homesteaders, whatever, especially on a smaller piece of property, understand the benefits of having chickens and rabbits and bees and goats. We're not talking cows. We're talking micro livestock. And I want to, you know, congratulate Jimmy in the chat room because his chicken went broody and she's sitting on an egg, so he's going to be a papa probably in about 3 weeks. So it'll be interesting to follow that and see how it all turns out. But congratulations. That's awesome. But we're not talking about big livestock. We're talking about a couple chickens. Now, our government during World War II used to tell us that we should have these things. We should be self-sustaining. We should have victory gardens and chickens in our yards so we can take care of our families. How the hell did we get from that to where we're at now? But Michigan just passed some laws where it's illegal to have bees and chickens in your yard. So how are you to be self-sustaining when our government is against us? So we talked about power, but let's dig back into that. So we've got the power companies now coming after us if we want to get off the grid with solar or whatnot, because they're saying, no, we're not going to pay you back. We're not going to do anything. It's illegal. And I'm sure they have henchmen and whatnot if I dig far enough into it. But another thing, a lot of self-sustaining people look at wood-burning stoves. You had to be asleep to miss the fact that this past year, the EPA again, which by the way, they're the ones that are after the coal miners, they want the wood-burning stoves to be 80%, to burn 80% more clean than past models. This is 2015 models and up. The manufacturers of wood stoves came back and said, if we have to make every wood stove out there 80% cleaner, you wouldn't be able to afford them. And then a light bulb went off somewhere and said, maybe that's the bottom line anyways. The EPA came back and said, well, particulate matter is a big health issue. A lot of things are a big health issue. The food that grocery stores, the government funded, big box, Chef Boyardee type companies, half the stuff in those products are a health issue. So why aren't they going after them? Well, maybe because if you do some research, you'll find out how much money they lobby in Washington to certain politicians. So why bite off the hand that's feeding you? So like I said, it all comes back to politics in a nutshell. Control. So how much control are you going to allow them to have over you? You take out wood stoves and every house out there that depends on it, everybody in the probably northern half of the United States, is probably going to freeze. Or a lot of them use that as their cooking stove. I understand there's a need for checks and balances to a degree. Some people out there just cannot self-control themselves, and I understand that. But our checks and balances here in the United States is way out of whack. So how much control are you going to give them? Let's talk about the bartering system. You go off grid. You don't have a source of income. How are you going to pay taxes on your land? Well, you could barter. You could make something that somebody else wants and will pay you money for. But there are states out there that are imposing laws on bartering. It's illegal in certain areas now. And this is spreading. And it's not big news because a lot of people just think bartering. What is bartering? To only those that are paying attention, does it seem alarming? But bartering, if I barter you a lawnmower for, I don't know, a keg of beer, if my keg of beer is worth more than your lawnmower, then I have to pay taxes on the difference. It makes no sense unless you look at it from the point they're just wanting to control you. What business is it of theirs? I'm not harming them. You need to pay tax on this because we need to use the taxes for schools and roads and bridges and all that kind of stuff. I challenge you to go look and see where your taxes go to. The taxes that you pay off of your paycheck, where they actually go to. The taxes that you use the taxes that you pay when you buy commodities, at the grocery store, wherever. Where do those taxes go to? I think you'll be shocked when you find out. But those are the arguments. And then you look at education. You look at the regulations with homeschooling your own children and taking responsibility for their education and not force-feeding them the crap, the Common Core that's being taught in the public school system. How about what's in the news right now? Well, besides the fact that if your child is in certain areas, it's hit the news that if your child does not have enough money in their lunch account, then their lunch gets thrown away. But there's also some stuff that hit the news about kids that are peeing their pants because they don't feel it's right that they have to pay money to use the bathroom. What the hell are we allowing happen to our children? I've talked about our incident here with my son this past year. You know, we had looked at some of the stuff that he was learning in school to begin with, but he did miss more allotted time than our school system preferred. And you know what happens then? They don't get money from the state because there's a price on your child's butt. So they stepped in and said, you know, you can't do this. You need to send your child to school more often. Now, mind you, we had sought medical help because my child has IBS, and when he gets upset, it just makes it worse. And when he goes to school and he gets degraded by the teachers, it makes it worse, which turns into a whole snowball effect. So we had documentation from the teacher, or from our physician, which the school requested, but didn't. They didn't think that. I'm missing a word here. They wouldn't honor it, and it still did no good. So they ended up sending us to a family probation officer who basically wanted us to turn our rights over to our child and say that they had the right to come in anytime and test him. And I'm not talking a quiz. I'm talking take urine. I'm talking take blood, or anything else they chose to do at any time they felt like it. At that time, I'd had enough, and there was no way that was going to happen. So we removed our child from the school system, and personally, I think it's the best thing we ever did. And yes, I think I'm finally getting over the fact that I was waiting for somebody to come to the front door and tell me what I was doing was wrong. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in all of this, as we are so brainwashed to think any of this is wrong. We have been so hooked to the matrix for so long that it seems inconceivable that we could unhook ourselves and still breathe. What? Not be on electrical power? Not use the city water system? Grow our own food? Now we have to actually think for ourselves. You know, a lot of families out there are two-income families, and they're so caught up into one-upping the Joneses in the neighborhood because now they have to have the best car, the newest car, the biggest swimming pool, the nicest, you know, landscaped yard. Is that stuff important? I mean, truly, when it comes down to it. And maybe I learned that lesson early on in my life because both of my parents have passed away, and a plethora of other things. But it's just stuff. And it shouldn't dictate how you live your life. Relationships with people, those are important. Anytime, those could be taken from you. And there's no way to replace them. When I was probably 10, my house burnt to the ground. We lost everything that we owned except for the pajamas that I had on. So, you know, everything got replaced and it will get replaced. But it's not important. The people that you eat breakfast with in the morning, that you sit across the table from, that's what's important. The friendships that you build, that's what's important. If you're so caught up in all of the other stuff, then you're in deep trouble. Because what this country is about to go through, and it's funny, my daughter was talking about this the other day, just out of the blue. She goes, Mom, it's going to be the 20s again. Do you think the flappers are going to come back? And I'm like, what? And she goes, well, it'll be 2020. You know, in 1920, we had the flappers. Do you think that style's going to come back? She's a big fan of, Gatsby? And that whole era. And she finds that fascinating. She was kind of excited, kind of like, you know, every so often the bell bottoms come back. And then right after that, we had, World War II and the Great Depression. So, was she being prophetic? We all see where this country is heading. And are you ready for it? What rights are you going to stand up for this week? Who are you going to help out? Because if we don't stand up, you see what's going on. They're taking our rights from us to be self-sustaining little by little. They're not going to do it all at once. If you live in Michigan, you need to start fighting hard. Like I said, they just passed some laws up there recently where it's illegal to keep small animals. Bees, rabbits, chickens. Do you need much more than that anyways to be self-sustaining? You can't grow food in your own yard? It's one reason why I tote that people need to learn permaculture. The things that I talk about here and other people in the preparedness world talk about don't bring harm to the planet. Actually, it's a lot better for the planet than some of the mono farming that's going on. When you see fields and fields and fields of corn, first of all, you have to understand, we ship most of that stuff someplace else. It's not even used here in the United States. The impact on the soil alone is horrible. So what they do then is they get grants or funds from these big chemical companies, and they come in and they spray nutrients back into the soil, and then they use chemicals to keep the weeds and the bugs down. That is harming the earth. You learn the techniques of things such as permaculture, where a plant that takes nitrogen out of the soil is planted beside a plant that puts nitrogen back into the soil. Common sense will tell you that that's a lot better for our planet. You ever drive past somewhere in the field and the wind's blowing and you get dust all over the place? That isn't normal. It's not how this planet was designed. Follow the rules of nature. Look at how things grow. If you go out to the forest and see how plants grow and the bed of mulch in there that sustains these plants. Look into gardening. Back to Eden is a good resource for that. Just awesome results that they're getting, and I have the video for it up on our website so you can check it out, but it's called Back to Eden Gardening. And it talks about the very same thing. Now, just to forewarn you, there are some religious overtones, so you'll just have to, get past that. It's not going to turn you into, I'll just let go. But look into it. Permaculture. Can you plant plants around your house so it doesn't look like a garden? Yeah, you can. You can learn how to do that. But you also need to look at, if you live in a development or something like that, where the rules are stringent, fighting back. And it's time that we all start fighting back and standing up and stop being scared. Because when you're scared, it's when you can be controlled. Things have to change. They will change. But we need to sway it in our direction. I posted a story about Spain yesterday, and they've seen a 500% increase in what they term as very long-term unemployment. If you read through it, it goes on to say many of these people are now structurally unemployed, and many of those over 50 may never work again. It's a national disaster. That kind of hurts because as a person in that age bracket, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, wow, everybody my age will never work in Spain. And what are they going to do? How are they going to live? And I kind of freaked one person out on the page when I posted it. And it's like, define work. Am I working for somebody else now? Because that's basically what the story is about. I just won't have an outside functioning job where I have to get up every morning and live my life for them. Kind of like a lot of us do now. Instead, if you want to think of it that way, you will have the ability to live your life the way you choose. Isn't that what we all want to begin with? How many of us really enjoy spending, 10, 12, 15 hours of our day devoting it to someone else's wallet? That's what we do. As opposed to being self-sustaining ourselves. Imagine taking the hours that you spend making someone else rich and using that to your benefit. Imagine if most of the people in the United States did that. We were outside, we were working in our yards, which now have been turned into glorious vegetable gardens, and we have our little micro livestock out there, and we're actually outside in the sunshine getting that vitamins from the sun that most of us don't have, and now we're sickly because of it. We actually talk to our neighbors. Okay, well, one of mine, we'll just let him go. But you might actually get to know your neighbors. Do you think your life would be happier and better for it? Do you think you would be more productive? So why do we have to work? Why do we have to have jobs? Because everybody in the past has done it that way? And I'm on a rabbit trail right now because, a lot of people have said, well, we have to pay taxes on our property. Because even if we owned our property, which we might not own all of our property because a lot of times you don't get mineral rights, etc., with the property that you buy. But they're like, how can you do that? Even though you buy your property, you have to pay taxes on it every year. You don't pay those taxes. They take the property from you. They sell it to pay for the taxes that they're taxing you with, even though you own the property. I'm on a rabbit trail. I'll let you know what I find out there. But are there ways around that? Quite possibly. But damn it, we have to stand up. This madness has to stop. It makes no sense. You go down the rabbit trail and it all comes back to a handful of people that are telling us how to live our lives. Yeah, they've branched out and they've got more people brainwashed and they do their dirty work for them. But follow the rabbit trails. I'm a grown adult. I'm out to harm no one. I'm somebody's wife, I'm somebody's mother, I'm somebody's sister, I'm somebody's aunt. I'm just like every other female out there. There's nothing special about me. Okay, we'll let that one go. But damn it, it's time to stand up, and it's time to do the right thing. Be responsible. I choose to be responsible. But the government is putting restrictions on how responsible I can be. And it's time to fight back. Can I fight back alone? I can. Am I going to get noticed? Probably not as much as if we all stood together. If you're having problems in the area that you live, let me know. The nice thing about Indianapolis is, yes, they do have, and I'm not going to get caught up in, is it a law, an ordinance, or whatever, but there are rules out there where you can have chickens in the backyard. Now there are restrictions on it, such as, do you want to, can you have a rooster? How many can you have? That kind of thing. I understand that. Last thing I want is to live by, the crazy chicken woman that has, hundreds of chickens in her yard and it smells like, gaca. But, a family doesn't really need that many chickens. A couple good layers and you're good. You have a fresh supply of eggs. A couple rabbits, you'd be surprised at how much meat you can get out of a couple rabbits. But I can have as many plastic pink flamingos in my yard as I want. Which makes no sense to me. So tonight at 11 o'clock, we'll be back to play some Conflicted, the survival card game. Let's see. Tonight's guest is the winner of a contest. If you're not in the Facebook group, there is one specifically that daily plays the game and talks about different scenarios. So we'll be giving them a shout out because the admins for the group will be on the show tonight, and the winner of a contest that had the best answer that people voted for on the scenario is joining us as part of her torture. So we'll have a full house with actually some women on the show tonight for a change, which is awesome. This week I'm working on the future lineup of the show because I've neglected that, quite honestly. So we'll get that back up and running and posted. I'm going to be working on the website this week because I formed a Facebook group a couple months ago now, specifically geared towards preparedness for people with special needs, and it has been very helpful for a lot of people. So I want to get a page up on the website with a lot of the information on there that people can go to, because I know a lot of people out there have objections to social media for various reasons. You either love it or you hate it. So the information needs to get out there because more and more people are waking up, and the more we talk about it, the better it is. There are still people out there that think the way to go is to be the lone prepper. I kind of disagree on that to a degree. We're not going to get through anything that happens by ourselves. We're predominantly pack animals, and we need other humans, and we're not all knowing, whether we think so or not. So I don't have all the abilities. I'm on this journey just like everybody else. So learning as we're going along. So I need other people around me with information. And I think that makes us stronger as a whole. I want to thank Jules for UCY.TV and giving us all a platform to talk about these issues, because you won't find this on any kind of mainstream media. But got to talk about it a little bit in the government issues that are going on RT USA yesterday. It is what it is. But if the message gets out there and it helps someone, all the better for it. But we have to be able to talk about it. We have to be able to get good information out there. And we have to stand up to and not irrationally push back for the government. A lot of gun owners are in the news right now. And whether you agree or disagree, they think it's their right to open carry. In a lot of states, it's legal. But are they going about it the smart way? That's questionable. But there are several restaurant groups out there that are banning open carry or any kind of carry whatsoever. I want to say Chili's, Chipotle. There are a couple other ones I can't think of. Starbucks in certain areas. So when you have people that are carrying ARs and all kinds of semi-autos into restaurants, is that the best way to go about this? You have to wonder. I know the NRA has even stepped up and said, really? We understand you have a point to make, but let's be smart about how we go about it. Yeah, we all understand we have the right to do it. But freaking other people out, just because you have the right and bringing more harm than good might not be the smartest way to go about it. I think educating people to begin with, is the way to go. If you are a female out there and need some kind of specialized training because you do have a fear of firearms, give me a call. Always up for female empowerment. It's our responsibility to take ownership of our safety and security. We've learned over and over and over again that at some point in our life, we might not have a male around us to protect us. Anytime there's a downgrade situation, rape goes up at least 30%. It's our responsibility, ladies, to step up and take care of ourselves and not rely on others to do that for us. So, going on later today, we'll let you know. But this weekend, the Mr. and I will be celebrating 17 years of wedded bliss, and probably we'll be just sitting around the fire. We don't have fancy plans. Think about throwing some wings in a Dutch oven in cast iron and throwing it in the fire because he likes that kind of stuff. But I wish all of you a very productive and safe week, and I will see you in the morning in 7 days. Before that, join us tonight at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time as we play some Conflicted, the survival card game. Want to congratulate G. Michael Hoff. His latest book, Sanctuary, went #1, which is awesome. And his deck of Conflicted cards matching his book is out also. And he was talking about a movie deal for his book. So excited to hear about that. We'll get him back on the show here over the next few weeks as information comes about. But I'll throw up some test questions to get you all warmed up for tonight. And I am just totally rambling on here now, aren't I? But please take it upon yourself to step up and step out.